the economy seems to be driven or starting to see a ground-out swell of entrepreneurs.
That's right.
In terms of our minority communities, what are your views on the sort of entrepreneurial opportunities for them?
Tremendous. You know, sometimes we have the perception that Malays are not entrepreneurs, which is not true. You look at the history of this region, before Raffles came over, there was a thriving mercantile class. I'm reading a book on the history of Indonesia, and it's amazing when they describe Batavia, Java, even Sumatra in the 13th, 14th century. It's cosmopolitan. They had German traders, they had Chinese traders, they had Arab traders working together with the local population. So people were actually contributing to the commerce of the region. And you see now a lot of younger Malays, for example, professionals, doctors, lawyers, engineers, architects. After a few years, they decide, I want to go on my own. So they strike it on their own. They're trying to start their own business. And now you see a small but growing pool of young Malay IT tech entrepreneurs trying their thinker to develop this app or that app, which I think that's great. They're getting onto the bandwagon and they realize that this is an opportunity. We're on the right track. Yes, if you ask me as minister, I wish there were a lot more Malay entrepreneurs, but I think the numbers will come.
The Malay Muslim community has played its role in the economic growth of Singapore. Are you satisfied with the progress of the Malay Muslim community?
Well, I would say yes and no.
It's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress. You're never happy. You wish you could have done faster. You wish you could have moved things quicker. But you know at the end of the day, you have to convince the community to come along. Let me just give you a broad sketch. I look at this data constantly. If you look at the data at the generic level, educationally, for example, you can see the trend going upward. More Malays are doing well at PSLE, O-level, A-level, the university. Every year, Mendaki gives awards for performance at national exam, not our exam. And last year numbers was 501 winners, highest ever. When we started out in 1982, it was at 28 or something like that. So a lot more Malays are doing well. Socially, our problems are coming down. Divorce rates are coming down, the drug problem is being tackled, dysfunctional families are there, but we're tackling them, and marriage is strengthening. Economically, you see more diversity in terms of Malay workforce. You can't think, for example, 20 years ago of a Malay scientist. Now you go to A-Star, there are tons of Malay scientists. So from a broad, generic picture, the trends are in the right direction. There are local problems, no doubt about that. Now we have to tackle that. But can we do better? Of course. It's just a matter of time, and we just have to push on. The best measure of this is to ask Malay parents how much of their discretionary spending is on education.
Minister, you talked about being the oldest.
Oh, my.
So back in your days,
Yes.
what were opportunities like for you?
We were part of a growing nation. We worked together, take the opportunities that were created at that time. Singapore was just coming out from independence. I grew up in a very, very multiracial kampong. This is in Kembangan, like Lorong Chuan, where people of different background, different races. I was staying at Jalan Lapang. Beside it was a row of Chinese neighbors. Behind it was a Chinese temple. I used to go up and climb their jambu and stole the jambu. And then you have Chinese neighbors who always cook during Chinese New Year. I love the love letters. I remember my mother always say, you go to the house, okay, makan. You take the peanuts, the kuaci, the drink, don't touch the food because whether halal or not. So I used to go to my neighbor's house for Chinese New Year. And they come to our house for Hari Raya.
Yeah.
You interact with your neighbors who are Chinese, who are Indian. You pick up a bit from what they're doing, the desire to study, to do well. Look at the Chinese businesses, you ask, why can't you be like them? So I think that multiracial pot also gave you certain desire that you want to excel. My late grandmother was a hawker before NEA even existed. We sell goreng pisang. I used to remember carrying the oil because she do the goreng pisang, and I would sit down and listen to the Kampong folks that would come to her store. Chinese, Indians, chit-chatting, talking about this guy has done well, this guy has gone to universities. So, wow, can I be like that one day or not? So that opportunity to listen, to interact, gives you that sense that you also can be like one of them. There was no barrier. People didn't think about it. I remember one of the men, his name was Baba Tan, Peranakan. He'll come in the morning to my grandmother's shop, order a kopi and the goreng pisang, and he will tell stories. So you dengar lah, they say, okay, well, it's very nice, this, that. And you are young, so you don't have to go to school early. School was in the afternoon. So to a large extent, I think that setting allows you to be exposed to different ideas, different values, and different dreams. I came from a very poor family, 9 brothers and sisters. My father wasn't well educated, my mother was not, but at the same time, opportunities were few and far between because we were not that rich. But you realize that the government were creating those opportunities. So we see other boys doing well in school, they say, why can't I be like him? So that sort of motivated and drove me, and as I said, the rest is history.
The kampong in Lorong Chuan,
Chuan,
was it similar?
Yes, it was very similar. It was very exciting because we have different neighbors from different races. My family runs a provision shop and also a pig farm. To make everybody feel integrated together, we started selling things that cater to the different races too. And as a result of that, there was a lot of interaction. I remember back in 1980s, there was a mega epic flood. We had like hundreds of pigs and everyone came in to help. There was a hill on top. I think a Caucasian family was staying there. They opened up the gates and that was very touching. That was the true Kampong spirit because when you see a disaster, when you see a crisis, everybody put away all the differences and just help each other. And that to me was something very, very moving that I will not forget for a very long time. I remember that the flood was this high and they had to put me near the rooftop.
I'm curious, what was the racial mix back then, like at your kampong? Were there more Chinese, more Malay, more Indians, or were they fairly equally mixed?
I think 60% Chinese and then the rest were Malay, Indians. Yeah.
Minister, yours?
I grew up in many kampongs because we move around a lot. My father had difficulty holding a steady job. So at Kembangan was very multiracial. You have Malays, Indian, Eurasian. There was a very bright Eurasian boy. I remember he was my classmate. He got to RI, I couldn't get to RI. And we have Indians, we have Chinese, and at some point in time, I wanted to make extra money. I give tuition to the Chinese kid. But I was staying in another kampong in Somapa. And that was a very interesting kampong. I have to tell you this because I was in the 64 riots when we had the racial riots in Singapore. My eldest brother was in RI. He was coming back, but he couldn't contact us at that time, no handphone. So my mother was worried sick, but there was already racial clashes. And right opposite my kampong was the Chinese kampong, Somapa, you know, where you have the Chinese gangsters. Believe it or not, the two kampongs had a meeting to say, whatever it is, we protect each other. Don't allow outsiders to come in to create problem. And so I remember that night, they created the first watch group to keep an eye on the kampong. My late father was involved. But my kampong was also very unique. At that time, you don't have electricity. You have the generator. This was a Malay kampong, and the guy who was running the generator was a Chinese man. And whenever you reached 7 o'clock, there was no electricity. We know he was drunk. So I'll go up and wake him up to crank up the generator. Somehow that you live and let live, you understand one another. But the most important thing I thought during those racial riots, we came together to protect one another because we knew this is all outsiders trying to create trouble, but we have our kampong, we want to preserve that racial harmony.
While we're discussing all the positive aspects, all the achievement, we also need to talk about the flaws that divide us. We need to have this open and honest conversation. There are racism, it may be subtext, but there are. I feel that this is something that we need to share.
When PM Go decided to have the huge dialogue after 9/11, it was a big move by the government to bring out the issue of terrorism out into the open at Kallang Theatre. We felt that was the best way to come out openly and discuss this frankly. We have a problem. It doesn't affect the entire Malay Muslim community. You have a small group who are terrorists who wants to create some of this mayhem. There are some issues you need to be open and frank about it.
Talking about 9/11, that was a turning point for me as a Muslim. I have friends from all different races. When my friends question me, what is jihad? Should I be afraid of you? They want me to explain what's the real meaning of jihad. So I explain to them that Islam teaches peace. When we talk about jihad, we're talking about jihad to better ourselves. We're talking about jihad to spread the word of Islam in a positive light. But Islam doesn't force people to do anything, actually. Each religion teaches peace. So whatever is happening in the Middle East does not represent Islam.
I agree. For me, September 11 was a huge impact on all of us globally, and for me personally as well. It was a turning point because it was the first time when it happened, I had friends who had grown up with, went to school with, asking me, hey, how come your people do this? So I was shocked, and I feel like I cannot represent Muslims around the world. But it was an opportunity to turn around, to have the dialogue. And it was the first time in my life that I actually had discussion on race and religion with my friends. It was a huge milestone for me.
If I can add to that point, when you look back, as you say, it was a challenge, but out of it, there were many opportunities. And I use opportunities in a very narrow sense to allow the community for the first time to explain Islam to the non-Muslim community. Prior to this, we were teaching Islam to Muslims. When I teach Islam to you, somehow you understand the lexicon, you understand the terminology because you have been brought up in that culture. And when I turn to a non-Muslim, I talk about what is halal, what is korban, what is haji, and then it allows us to develop new skill sets. And that's why we created the Harmony Center to try and explain our religion, which is a peaceful religion, to a broad base of people who have never understood what Islam is all about. And in that sense, it allows us to actually open up to the wider community. So I think that has helped a lot in terms of the integration process. Today, our Harmony Center is well received by people from various backgrounds. In fact, I have friends from Malaysia who were surprised to see what we are doing. This is a Harmony Center which is beside the mosque in Bishan, where we display all the 10 religions which are available in Singapore. They were surprised that we can do that. That shows the confidence of the community, that we know that this is a challenge, but we take it upon ourselves to go out and explain that that's not what Islam is all about. This is what Islam is all about, and we share commonalities with various religions in terms of peaceful living in our communities.